Hello, friends, and welcome to Unseen But Believed, the podcast, where we talk about all things invisible illness. I'm your host, Anna Constantopoulos, and I've been chronically ill for over 8 years. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Season 2 of Unseen But Believed, the podcast. I know it's been quite a while since I've done an episode, but hopefully in this episode I will be able to explain that fully. So some of you know that over the past 6 months, I've dealt with a lot of really crazy and unpredictable health issues. And so in this episode, I just wanted to go over some of those, talk about what's been going on for the past 6 months, and then dive deeper in later episodes into how I've been able to manage those symptoms, how I've been able to, find appropriate treatment, and how I've been able to heal my body from, the most crazy infections that you would never guess. So really all of this started when I competed at Miss Tennessee in June. Some of you may know that I do pageants. I've been doing them for 5 years now, solely with the Miss America organization, and I absolutely love it. It's been a wonderful experience, and I'll definitely do another episode about my experience. So Miss Tennessee is the state competition, and if you win Miss Tennessee, you compete at Miss America. So it's a very, very big deal. And I had been working for this specific competition. I'd been preparing for a year. And so I was really excited by the time that I got there because I felt like I had done everything that I could possibly do. Like, I was so excited. I had just prepared to the best of my ability, and I was so excited to do my best once I got there. So I got there. It was really fun. It was all the way in Memphis, Tennessee, which is about 8 hours from me. And, we have a week of events before the competition. So we go to a lot of different fun events. We volunteer at children's hospitals. We go do all the touristy attractions in Memphis. It's a ton of fun. We get to know the other competitors, and it is so much fun. But by the second or third day, I started getting really weak, and I started to feel really sick. And if you're somebody who's ever had any kind of bacterial infection before, you know what that feels like. You know that it just kind of comes on you all of a sudden, and you feel really weak, you feel achy, like you feel like you just cannot do anything. And that's the feeling that I got, I think, on my second day at Miss Tennessee. So obviously I was super freaked out. I had been working so hard to prepare for this week of competition. And then suddenly I had this infection feeling. And so I texted my doctor and I said, hey, I don't know what's going on. This is what I'm feeling. I feel like it's some kind of infection. I don't know what. What should I do? Like, should I go to an urgent care? I have no idea what to do. And he sent me in a week of antibiotics and said, hey, just take these. They're broad spectrum. It should treat whatever's going on. And I said, okay. And I took them. I continued to get worse every single day at Miss Tennessee. By the final night, I could barely stand. I was sitting on the side of the stage in my floor-length beaded evening gown because I could not stand longer than a few minutes at a time. And it was just horrible because I had worked for so long, and by the end of it, I was so sick, I felt like I couldn't really do anything. And so, obviously, I did not win. I'm very grateful for the experience. It was a really wonderful experience. I love all the women that I've met there, and I was able to polish a lot of my speaking skills, my performance skills, things like that. And so I'm very thankful for the experience. But it was also very frustrating because I felt like I couldn't do my best. I was actually so shaky during the talent competition that I actually dropped my drumstick. Somehow I caught it. Don't know how that happened, but it worked. And so very thankful for the experience, but very frustrated that I was sick. So I came back home, saw my doctor and said, hey, the antibiotic, I don't think it worked. I still feel really sick, and I feel actually a bit worse than before I took the antibiotic. And he said, okay, well, I'm just going to give you 2 weeks of a really strong antibiotic, and that'll just knock out absolutely anything. And I asked if he needed to test me or take any blood work, and he said no. So I took the 2 weeks of the antibiotics. By that point, I was so sick, I could not even get out of bed. I can't even describe the kind of feeling. It was just, my entire body felt like it was weighed down. Like there was a weighted blanket on me at all times. I felt exhausted. I couldn't think straight. I was just having pain all over my body. And it was just a horrible, horrible feeling. And so I texted him again and I said, hey, I don't know what's going on. I've never felt like this after antibiotics. I feel so sick, like I'm dying. Please help me. Like, I don't know what to do. And he said, okay, there's one more antibiotic we can try. It's called Cipro. It's a little risky, but it's really our only option at this point. And so I trusted him and I took it for a week. As you can imagine from where the story is going, it did not work. And Cipro has a lot of terrible side effects. I think it has 3 or 4 black box warnings on it from the FDA, which I was not aware of, which causes a lot of issues with tendons and ligaments and loose joints, all things which I already deal with. And so after I finished that round, my legs were in such horrible pain that I was just pretty much crying all day, every day. It was just a horrible, horrible feeling. And at that point, I felt like I wasn't really getting answers. I didn't know what was going on with my body. And so I went to a different doctor. I went to an urgent care, and they told me to go to the ER. They're like, this is not normal. This should not be happening. You need to go to the ER. So I went to the ER, and I was having some other symptoms at that time that had popped up, and so I felt like something else was going on as well. So I went to the ER, and I was there for about 2.5 to 3 hours, and I was talking to the doctor there, and he said, we did a preliminary blood work, like your white blood cell count's kind of high, but like you seem fine, so we're just going to send you home. And I said no. And please remember, you always have that option. You always have the option to disagree with your doctors, and I highly recommend that you listen to them first, but you do always have the option to disagree, to ask questions. And I said, no, I'm not going home. I feel horribly sick. I've been on all these antibiotics that should have wiped out whatever this is. If it was a virus, it would have gone away weeks ago, because at this point it'd been almost 2 months of antibiotics. And so I said, if it was a virus, it would have been gone weeks ago. It clearly has to be some kind of infection, and the antibiotics aren't working. Like, I truly feel like if you send me home, I'm going to get worse and worse until I die. And I never say stuff like that. Like, I've been through health stuff for years, and I never say stuff like that. But I just told him, I was like, I'm not going home. And he was like, well, you have to. And I said no. And we argued for probably 15 minutes. And then I called my dad, and I said, hey, Dad, this guy's not admitting me to the hospital. Can you come? And my dad, of course, came, and my mom with him. My dad talked to the doctor for 5 minutes, and then I was admitted into the hospital. So if you're a young woman who's trying to get appropriate treatment, it's not a bad idea to have your dad or boyfriend or whoever come and fight for you. So I finally got admitted to the hospital. They ran a bunch more tests. Those finally showed that I had 5 antibiotic-resistant infections. If you're not familiar with antibiotic-resistant infections, it's exactly what they sound like. They're what were once normal infections, but because of so many people using antibiotics or misusing antibiotics, they've become stronger and resistant to normal antibiotics. Let's see how many times I can say antibiotics in 5 minutes. But they become so strong because they're resistant to the normal antibiotics we use. And so the levels of treatments available are the strongest antibiotics. The infections that I had, there was only one antibiotic that would treat it, and it had to be IV antibiotics. If I had gone home and hadn't gotten those IV antibiotics in the hospital, I don't want to think about what would have happened. But it wouldn't have been good. I can tell you that. Those infections were not going away on their own. And I know because those doctors told me that. And so I was in the hospital for several days. I had several days of IV antibiotics. And they sent me home with, I think, 2 months of an antibiotic called vancomycin, which my doctor nicknamed tancomycin because it is so incredibly strong. I was on those antibiotics for 2 months, and by the end of it, I went and got tested again. Keep in mind, I've been on antibiotics for 4 months at this point. And so my immune system is just trash. I feel terrible all of the time. Like, it is just not a fun situation to be in. And I'm still going to grad school at this point. I'm working in the library. I'm working a TA job. Like, it was just not a fun point. I was having to miss a ton of classes, call out of work from being so sick. I was so weak. I could barely study. It was horrible being on these antibiotics. Are we at 20 times of me saying antibiotics yet? I don't know. So after 2 months of those really strong antibiotics, I went to infectious disease. They were a specialist I'd been referred to, and 2 of the infections were still remaining. And at that point, they didn't know what to do. They said, we'll just keep you on the same antibiotic, on tancomycin, for, as long as it takes. And that's a terrifying thing to hear your doctor say, to say that they're not really sure what else to do. They're not sure why this infection hasn't gone away. They still aren't sure where I picked up these infections because, I mean, there are 5 different ones. They're supposed to be extremely rare, like only healthcare workers are supposed to pick them up. I am not a healthcare worker, and so they have absolutely no idea how I contracted these. And so me and my parents were talking, and we came to the conclusion that, okay, I can try more antibiotics, but I think those might kill me just as easily as the infection would. And so we didn't really know what to do. But I'm very thankful that my mom, being the smart woman that she is, started doing a ton of research on antibiotic-resistant infections. I don't think that woman slept for 2 weeks trying to figure out if there's some other way to treat me. And so she came to me with pretty much a book of research saying, okay, there's a lot of research and studies being done on how to treat antibiotic-resistant infections because doctors know that there's going to come a point where these antibiotics aren't working anymore and they are going to have to find other ways to treat them. And so she pulled up a list of probably like 20 supplements. She's like, these are all things I've read about that were used before we had antibiotics. These are things that, some Eastern cultures still use to treat infections. She's like, what if we try these things first, and then if they don't work, we try antibiotics again? And I took some time to really think about it and pray about it. If you're not a Christian, that's totally fine. But for me, I always look to wisdom from God in situations like that when I have no idea what to do. And so I prayed, I read, I thought, and I agreed with my mom. I was like, I don't think, clearly the antibiotics aren't working. The doctors know it's not working. We have to try something else. And so I started handfuls of supplements. They were not fun to take, but I took them for, I think, about 2 or 3 weeks, went back to infectious disease, and the infections were gone. One of them, they told me I would have this infection for the rest of my life, but that it would just be dormant. And the test came back completely negative and completely clear. To me, that is absolutely a miracle. I never expected that to happen. But it was truly amazing that these were infections that doctors said were going to kill me if they weren't treated by antibiotics. And somehow, through all these different natural remedies, through so many people praying for me and giving me articles about different infections, and my mom staying up late and doing research, and my dad buying all these supplements, and people at school supporting me and praying for me, these infections were negative. And that was just truly amazing. Now, it doesn't end there, obviously. Being on antibiotics for 4 months, those symptoms don't just automatically go away. I no longer had any active infections, which was huge. I was out of immediate danger, but I was still dealing with an incredibly weak immune system, and I was dealing with horrible chronic pain every day. I had a migraine for 2 months after those antibiotics because my body was just so filled with inflammation. I was just in horrible pain all the time. I actually wasn't able to finish that semester of grad school. I had to take incompletes, and I'm still making up that work now because I was just so sick, and it was absolutely a horrible experience. But after I tested negative for those infections, I knew that I would be able to make a recovery. And it was going to be a really slow process, but it was going to happen. And so since then, I've been doing a lot of different natural things. And really, all this credit goes to my mom. She is the one who has found these supplements. She is the one who has helped clean up our family's diet and made diet changes to figure out what foods are inflammatory, what foods aren't, what additional supplements we can take, drinking things like kombucha and eating fermented foods, cutting out gluten and dairy and sugar and all these different things. So the credit really goes to her for doing all that research. But slowly, as I began to add in these things and cut negative things out of my life, I've been able to heal slowly and build back up my immune system. So I can definitely dive deeper into all those things in a later episode. It might be several episodes because, let me tell you, it has been a lot of things and a long process to recover. But I'm so thankful that I'm able to even be at this point. My health isn't 100% perfect. I'm not pain-free every day, but I'm able to start living my life again. And I'm just so thankful for all the people who have supported me in this, who have prayed for me in this, who have sent me encouraging messages, who have offered to bring my family food and have wrote me notes of encouragement and prayed for me and my family. It just means so much. And so It was quite a crazy couple of months, and it was really difficult to go through, but it's inspired me all the more to keep fighting for unseen but believed and to keep fighting for women with invisible illnesses, because I was so close so many times to not being treated, to not being believed. You know, my doctor never ran any kind of test to figure out what was going wrong with me. And I took a month of antibiotics needlessly. You know, those antibiotics weren't working on the infections that I had. And if he had just taken the test ahead of time, then I would have been treated properly and it would have saved me months of pain. You know, the ER doctor almost sent me home. He thought nothing was wrong with me because the preliminary tests were negative. And that is a story that I hear from so many people, especially young women. I posted a TikTok not that long ago talking a little bit about my experience and how if I had gone home, if the ER doctor had let me go home, I probably wouldn't be here today. And there are hundreds of comments. You can go look at it on TikTok or Instagram. There are hundreds of comments of women saying that the exact same thing happened to them. That if they hadn't fought or hadn't called in, you know, a brother or a dad to fight for them, they would never have gotten treated and they wouldn't be alive today. And it's horrible that women are still having to fight to be believed. And that's why I started Unseen But Believed, because women are so often dismissed. Their symptoms are dismissed as anxiety or being emotional or just being stressed when something else is actually going on. You know, women take 4 years longer to get diagnosed with an illness than a man with the exact same illness. And so I encourage you today that if you are a young woman and you don't have answers, but you know that you're dealing with some kind of sickness or illness or infection, keep fighting for that. Keep doing the research. And I'll continue to provide episodes and articles to provide, you know, information about that and how to go about that. You know, if you're someone who knows somebody like that, send this episode to them. Encourage them that it doesn't matter if one doctor dismisses you. Go to a different doctor. Do your own research. There is an answer out there somewhere. And so that's why I haven't posted in the past 6 months. It's been a very crazy time and a very difficult time, and I hope to continue to share more about what I learned through that experience, how I've grown through that experience. But thank you all again for being so patient. I'm really looking forward to continuing to share more consistent content now that I'm feeling better. And thank you all so much for the support of the podcast and Unseen But Believed. It truly does make a difference. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. If you enjoyed it, please feel free to leave a rating or subscribe for future episodes. It's a small action, but it really does help to spread the word about invisible illnesses. Also, if you want to stay up to date on all things Unseen But Believed, go follow me over on Instagram and TikTok at Unseen But Believed. And remember, just because invisible illnesses are unseen, they should be believed.